Welcome to the Author's Porch, where every good conversation happens. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. From author to author, we want to give you an experience where you learn and enjoy the conversation. Authors tell you about their journey, you learn about new books, and at the end of the day, you go home with a smile on your face because the Author's Porch is a beacon of light, bringing you home to the family you never knew you had. We hope that you enjoy the show. Hey everybody, welcome to the Author's Porch, where every great conversation happens. We are excited to be back with you for another fantastic author interview. Tonight we have J Farese on the porch with us. How are you doing, Susan?
I'm doing great, CJ. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for coming on and talking with us. Guys, I'm excited because I was able to get a copy of Susan's book and read some of her poems before we came on for this conversation. And the beauty that is her poetry is awe-inspiring and very heartfelt. So we're going to get to that in a few. But before we get really deep into the words, I want to give you a little background on Susan, which I'm sure you read her full biography. But one of the other things that I love about her is Susan is also a former veteran. Not former veteran. She is a veteran.
I am a veteran.
I told you I was going to say words that made absolutely no sense.
No problem.
So Susan is a former Navy nurse. She is a veteran and she is a registered nurse as well. Coming straight out of New Jersey. She's a New Jersey native, and she is the CEO of SJF Communications, which is a publicist, marketing, PR extraordinaire, and so much more. The firm is. It does so many things. And she is also the author of Poetic Expressions in Nursing. And Susan, thank you so much for your service. Not only in the service, the military service, but also as a nurse, because we talked just a little bit before the show. At the beginning in December, a lot of things started happening in my personal life, and nurses, not just recently, but throughout my entire life, have been the catalyst in making sure that we're all safe and sound every single night. There's at least 10 nurses to one doctor.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So sure. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
And for being here.
Thank you. By the way, I was Navy and Army. I was Navy for 3 years and Army for 9.5 years. So almost 13 years active duty, and was a major when I left. And so that was many, many years ago. I got out in 1990. So that's many lives ago for me. But thanks for having me. Yeah.
I did not see that in your bio. Oh my goodness. Army and Navy. I did one and barely did that. I mean, I lasted 20 years by the skin of my teeth, and but it was the Air Force, totally different. And but 2 branches, couldn't have done it.
Yep. Thanks.
So wow. Thank you so much. Now, when you were in the service, were you a nurse in both branches?
I was, yes. I was a registered nurse. In the Navy, I worked general medicine, cardiothoracic surgery, step down. And then when I transferred to the Army, I was in several other clinical areas, surgical intensive care, emergency room, orthopedic surgery, nursing education and staff development, administrative. I was a chief nurse of an outpatient clinic, and I was a clinical nurse manager for an ICU as well. And then when I got out, I did research at Duke University, and I've been a nurse consultant as well, and a nurse entrepreneur. So I've done a lot in nursing, except for pediatrics, OB, and psych, but mostly adult. Yeah. And although I'm not clinical any longer, I keep my license, and I'm more of a nurse coach and mentor now, and a nurse poet, and teach haiku. And I'm starting to teach haiku to nurses for their stress management and wellness. So
I just looked at this. I looked at the screen and I saw myself kind of frowning, but it wasn't a frown because anything upset me. I was just like, I was trying to keep my mouth from dropping. The chills that I got, that is one amazing career, because people don't realize just what it takes to do what you have done, and now you're paying it forward. You're paying it
Absolutely.
forward, and still being that servant leader.
Well,
So
I mean, COVID brought me back to nursing, because
okay,
it was just so stressful for nurses, and anxiety and depression that they were
yeah,
undergoing, taking care of so many patients that had died and were extremely, very, very seriously ill. So that brought me back. And that's why I published the second edition of Poetic Expressions in Nursing, Sharing the Caring in 2021. It originally came out in 93. So
mhm,
I've added some, additional haiku at the end, and a new author's note, and a new cover, and that kind of thing. And yeah, I just feel really connected with nursing now. And I want to continue being passionate about creative arts and nurses, or creative arts with everybody, because they're just so therapeutic and cathartic, whether it's poetry for me, or, dance or theater, or making a film, cooking, doing some exercise, just anything that's creative and artistic,
mhm.
and is helpful for stress management in this day and age.
Yeah, and I could tell that in your poems. I was reading one and it talked about someone in a nursing home and how the patient didn't want to just be a lifeless person in a wheelchair, and how the nurse encouraged them to go out and do different things, bring them to activities, walk them around in their wheelchair, and they became their companion, their new friend. And you could see the life in the poetry.
Well, it comes from either experience or thoughts or conflicts I've gone through, or values that I had to clarify. So many different inspirations for my writing. And that poem, nobody's ever brought that poem up. I hear
Ah,
which one touches them, but that one, I just visualized a person at a nursing home, sad, depressed, with head lowered in a wheelchair or a jerry chair all day. And my poem is about, let's go for a walk in the sun. I'll
yeah.
wheel her out there, and you don't need to give up. You've got a life that you can share with me and teach me about life,
Yeah.
wisdom and things like that. The generational connection, actually.
Yeah, that one hit me. My mama was in a nursing home later on in her life, but she was the vice president of the nursing home council. She lived in that place like it was her whole community, and she loved it. And
Right.
the nurses there were her best friends, and it was an amazing community. And when I read that, I was like, yes, it was an amazing place for her. And I know a lot of
Yeah.
people sometimes get sent there and forgotten about by their family
Right.
members. So sometimes the nurses are the only family that they have
Exactly.
once they
You're
get there.
right.
So
You're right.
that poem was beautiful
Thank
amongst
you.
other ones.
Thank you.
Which one is your favorite in the book?
Oh, I have several favorite ones. I love intuition, because I've always had really strong intuition, and I wrote about
Oh,
intuition as well. The one about my grandma that we will probably talk
mm,
about, and Zest,
yeah.
and then some just about nursing in general, night shift, just nurses know, sharing the
Mm,
caring. I mean, there's just so many that are just I'm just fond of, and I like reciting them too. And when other people read them out loud, that's really interesting, because everyone has a different cadence. And
yes.
so I'm very much into rhythm and rhyme and things like that as well. Although not all of the poems rhyme, they're a little bit different. They're free, what do you call it? Freestyle, I guess.
Hmm.
And I also do some haiku at the end of the book as well. But yeah, I like many of them. I hope that's okay.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I love every
I've
single one
lived
of them.
them, so why
Yeah.
not, right?
Yeah, they're very deep and heartfelt, but they also had a sense of um, playfulness to them as well, and
Hmm.
that's what I loved about them. When you were writing them, did you have a, a specific message that you wanted to get across, or do all of them have their own message?
I think all of them have their own message. I never wrote the book to write a book either. I wrote the first poem about my grandmother, and Zest
Yeah.
ends. And when I read it to my mom on the phone the next day, she started crying and said, "This is the closest thing to what we went through. I want you to share this with everybody." And I was like, "What?" And then I would share it with everybody, either at a Chamber of Commerce meeting or a nursing education meeting. and people would want to come up and need tissues and want to talk about spouses or their uncle or their grandparent that had dementia. And so it rang true to people and it touched people's hearts. So I knew I had something, and I just kept writing after that. And the book was published in 93. So I was in my mid 30s at the time and dealing with just different, getting out of the military. That I was out of the military at that time, but I thought about some of the stories back then, and also wrote when my family members were in the hospital, just all different kinds of concepts about role modeling, about how nurses are like birds, day shift, night shift, just anything that was popping into my mind. And it helped me actually heal from my grandmother's death 20 years after her death as a nurse, reflecting on what we went through. So it was cathartic and therapeutic as well.
Yeah. So I'm trying to hold all of my emotions in, because you're speaking life into so many parts of me. When I retired in 2017, I was lost, and I didn't know how to function, basically. And I took to writing. It was my way of sorting out all the feelings that was inside of me. So I'm connecting with you, understanding that it is the only therapy that worked for me at the moment. I later went into therapy to work through more issues to continue, because the writing wasn't getting all of them out. And before the show, we talked about Zest, and how when I read it, I was just in tears, because of one, it is about your grandmother, and my grandmother was my best friend. And there was one line in particular that I just smiled, and I looked up and I said, "That's you, Grandma." And it said just one line, because I want you to read the poem, if you would, for us. It says, "She ran the show, she was in the know." And I said, "Oh my goodness, that was my grandmother," because she worked at a hotel, and she would run everyone out of there, because there was a bar connected to it and a restaurant connected to it. And my grandma was hard. She was a hard woman, but she was fair, and she loved me to no end. So
your first soulmate, right?
Yeah, exactly. But what it talks about is something that we're experiencing with my father at the moment, who's currently in the hospital, and we don't know how much more time we have with him. So it hit home. And I would love if you could share that with the audience, because I think that they'll understand how this poem was the catalyst to the trajectory of where you're at now and where you're going.
Well, the poem, can I just one note about the poem?
Yeah.
It was 1991, and I was fairly newly married at the time with my husband of 30-something years now. And we were at the movies and saw the movie Awakenings. Robert De Niro and Robin Williams were in that. It was a fantastic movie. And there was a character in the movie that reminded me of my grandmother. And I was sitting in the theater with my husband crying. And he's like, "What's the matter?" Because he didn't know her. She had passed away 20 years prior to that. We got home. A couple days later, he was on a business trip, and I couldn't get to sleep one evening. And I took a bath, couldn't get to sleep, had a glass of wine, couldn't get to sleep, just kept thinking of that movie and that character. She caught a ball she was sitting in a wheelchair, and she just rang out about the faces and the demeanor that my grandmother had right before she died. She was mute, she was vegetative, and yet she connected with me on her deathbed the day before she died. And part of this poem is about that. She really saw through me and didn't realize who my parents were. So it was very, very striking. And so I sat on the couch and I grabbed a journal that he had given me the holiday before, and that poem, 3 pages long, rhymed in sequence from childhood to 20 years after her death in 1991, reflecting on it. Yeah, pretty heavy. Pretty heavy.
Okay, I've got the tissues, Susan. I'm ready. I'm ready.
Okay, I'm going to grab my book here. Anne's Zest ends. Prelude. Her zest for life, boundless energy, a smile a minute so full of glee, remembrances of my grandmother Anne, so significant to me. She ran the show. She was in the know about this or that, nonetheless always on the go. So sharp, so much fun, and so on the ball. How I long to remember and long to recall. Endless walks, sun or snow when I was small. She picked me up when my spirit would fall. My first real buddy, my first true friend, her ears and shoulders she'd always lend. If I was sad, my pain I'd spend, but always through her my heart would mend. Intermission. But when I was about 7 in 1963, something in her changed so drastically. She would no longer laugh. She no longer knew me. She would wander about so aimlessly. She would light the gas stove and let the fire run free. Her eyes then would gaze in a wild combat stare. She grew mute and confused. She would pick at her hair. Who was this new stranger taking over her mind? Where did her spirit go, and what did it find? From doctor to doctor, this mystery grew. It was 1965, and still nobody knew. To a state institution eventually. Her spirit then faded each day religiously. She grew steadily worse. It took 6 more long years. I would visit her with my mother. We would shed many tears. Day passes were draining. The public would stare. We'd assist her in the bathroom, comb the knots from her hair. I wonder how she felt, personality withered. Did she realize her melt? Were her synapses in a blizzard? Finale. On the 13th of April, 1971, when the hospital called us, 'twas the weight of a ton. She was terminally losing the battle and had wasted away, lost all faculties, not her choosing. She died soon after that day, the next day. I reached for her hand at the bedside to say goodbye, friend, on that fateful day. And she mumbled and stared and connected. She mumbled as if to say, don't make me cry here. So long for now, Susan. I'm afraid it's time to take my rest, because Alzheimer's drained my life away, but at least you've inherited my zest. Reflections. 20 years later, I weep for that past. Fond memories of Anne. She left the good life so fast. Her suffering, although it was an unfair curse, was the stimulus for me to become a nurse. As I seriously reflect on this draining disease that robs the brain of freedom cells and independence ease, I am angry. No definite cause or cure has been found. All the research won't touch the pain that abounds. If I had just one wish that would be granted to me, I'd want to spend a day with Anne, just her and me. Her cheerful style, giving nature's soul gold, her best feature zest, her stature so bold. But who's kidding who? She was taken away in her prime. True servant of God, strong will, lost mind. Signed, one who can still remember.
So
Every
beautiful.
time. She
I
comes
know.
back every single time in my heart.
I
Every
told
time.
myself, don't bring up the tissue until she's finished so she can get through. So, but I mean,
Yeah.
it rings true, and I love that that was a catalyst for you becoming a nurse, for writing the poem,
Everything.
for writing that beautiful book to bring light on what nurses go through, how they feel the illness that the patients go through. You're helping them find ways to cope through
Right.
what they go through, and it's just it has so many dimensions.
It does. And nurses have so many stories in their hearts.
Yeah.
We take care of thousands of patients in their career.
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
it needs to come out in some way. And we have
Yeah.
to be careful, of course, with confidentiality, but fiction or poetry or dance or just some kind of a creative art can be
Mhm.
therapeutic and cathartic. And that's my message and my passion. And I just firmly believe in it because especially after COVID, nurses need love and care and support. And reach out to a nurse and thank them from your heart. It's very,
Yeah.
very, very heavy of an occupation, and nurses are very special. Yeah.
Absolutely. And you pay it back tenfold, and you are such a busy lady. I was looking, reading up on the things that you do. In addition to your writing and your advocacy, you're also a member of the SAG-AFTRA, American Legion Post 43, Veterans in Media and Entertainment, San Diego Writers Inc., and San Diego Press Club, the Southern California Writers Association, the Army Nurse Corps Association. These are all massive associations and clubs and things that help you get the word out through your company to help with your public relations and publicist of people who have wrote books, who have artistic expressions that they get out
Right.
there. Can you tell me more about the business side of it?
Sure, sure. Also, I'm a mentor at San Diego State University for the last 6 years or so as well. So I work with college students
Wow.
with their, with different majors too, that are either communications or health related. As far as the business, I started doing PR in 2011, kind of not really by default, but my daughter, who is an actor, was in a production of Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat that had adults and children in it. And I had done a press release for the kids just to get it out in the paper. And the director asked me, "You need to be on our board." And I joined that board and I became the PR for 5 years. And then in 2016, so that was 5 years, I went freelance, and then word of mouth started spreading, and other theaters, filmmakers, authors, artists, businesses, and now nursing has reached out to me. And so I've worked with a lot of creatives in the entertainment industry. And as far as the SAG-AFTRA, I've played a nurse in several movies, and a businesswoman and a mom and that kind of thing. So I have a very diverse life. I think I wish I could have played piano growing up, and I wish I was a Girl Scout. Those two things. But I've done a lot of other things, and I'm still not perfect at anything. I'm a jack of all trades, or a Renaissance woman, or whatever you want to call it, but I'm not done. I'm old and I'm not done yet. I'm still excited about life. I think people need to learn about and embrace change, because many people are afraid of change. And communication is the key. Communication matters, and this, I want to thank you too, because what you're doing for authors is phenomenal. And, and with social media and with websites and all, we can share what we're doing, because when I work with authors, especially, there are really many of them are very introverted or into the process of writing. And then they say, well, what do I do now? How do I sell it? So I try to be a catalyst to get them going and getting the word out. And it's a feat sometimes, but I love working with authors as well. So I've learned a lot along the way as well. So.
Yeah, authors are so much fun. I got into this because I started writing through therapy for myself, and then I realized that after I wrote, I was like, well, what do I do with it now? And there was nobody out there to tell me or to help me. And I was like, well, let me build something to help them get it out there. And that's, the same exact thing. So is there going to be a book number 2, another Poetic Expressions in Nursing number 2?
I'm not really sure, because this is the second edition. So I've added some haiku at the end that wasn't in the first edition. So for now, what I've been trying to do, and I'm starting to do, is to connect with different nursing organizations and teach haiku to nurses for stress management. And I admire nursing profession. There's a lot of changes going through, and stresses and such. So that's what I'm doing rather than writing right now. But you never know. I always wanted to write about, motherhood and, being in business and that kind of thing. But I'm also published in several online journals. I'm in the San Diego Poetry Annual for the, I think, 3rd time this year. That'll be coming out now shortly. And I've been in some anthologies. So here and there, I get some published work. I also have a blog on my website. And I'm also a nature photographer and bird watcher.
Wow.
So I try to combine all of these creative things about me, but I'm also a science person as well, a little remote from the science part of my life. But I
think if we keep you on longer than 30 minutes, we're just going to keep hearing more and more things that you do, because you keep pulling them out of the brain here. And I'm like, oh my goodness, there's only 24 hours in a day, Susan. How many more things?
I know.
But I find it amazing, because a lot of people find one thing and they just hold on to that one thing. And you, like you said, open your mind and try new things. And I think that's probably why you have been, 1, successful, and 2, joyful.
Joyful. My middle name is Joy. My middle name is Joy. Wow, who would have known? But also, as far as what I do, I've moved a lot. And I think when you were in the service as well, you usually change jobs or duty stations every year to a couple of years. And in nursing, we change jobs. So every time I moved, I reinvented in some way, and change became part of me. And when I got my master's, I really became a change agent. I'm not afraid of it. And so geographic changes and personal change made me gravitate to new things. And I love learning. So my message to you guys out there is to just never stop learning, follow your passions, do something creative, look outside, look at the clouds. Like the last couple of days in San Diego, it's been rainy, and actually the last several weeks, it's been really crazy weather. And to look at the sky, to look at the flowers that are blooming, just notice nature and write about it, take a break, take a mental health break and appreciate nature. And my thing is haiku because it's kind of succinct and easy, fairly easy to do. So I'm working with nurses with haiku right now.
That's
and I've taught
beautiful.
at the local San Diego County libraries for the last couple of years before COVID. So I'm getting back to teaching here and there, and I love doing virtual classes as well.
So what's next? Are you going to continue teaching, or do you have anything in particular that's your next big project that you're working on?
Yeah, I am. I'm working with a university hospital right now with their nursing wellness program. And I've introduced haiku with a video and virtual class. And if that, I'm very happy with it. And when I get their recommendations, they will get the word of mouth going, and we will start doing that, hopefully, on a national level. And I'm happy to do things from my desk and Zoom. It works rather than traveling all over. But I am definitely here locally in the Southern California area too. So I think that's what I'll be doing, and just enjoying life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can tell you are enjoying it. A lot of people will put a smile on, and you can see their faces and what kind of it's not the smile that they want to put on, but you could tell yours is genuine, and that's infectious. So it's beautiful.
Thank you. And I just really admire what you're doing too, because without you, I wouldn't be able to tell people what I do. So you're spreading the awareness and the word, and I love porches. So thanks for inviting me to the porch.
Well, thank you. That's all thanks to my grandmother, because that was the one thing. The porch light was always on. Yeah. And every time you showed up, she was outside waiting on you. So
super.
We grew up hanging out on the porch. So Susan, I've had an absolute wonderful time, but we all know that CJ is a chatterbox, and sometimes I get going on some things and I don't realize. So I want to make sure, is there anything that we didn't talk about tonight that you want to make sure that we brought up? Because this is all about you, but I do talk a lot sometimes.
It's okay. Basically, how to find me, I guess, is my website, sjfcommunications.com. That's SJF for Susan J Farese, communications, plural.com. And on most social media, I'm SJF Commo, COMMO, at SJF COMMO. You can easily find me that way. If anybody has any questions in the chat, are there any questions or anything else?
I think everyone's just been mesmerized with listening tonight, like the way I have, because like when you were reading, I was like, I looked like I was frowning, but I was just... I think that's what everyone's doing.
Well, I just want to say also, my family's been very, very supportive with everything that I've done.
I love that.
Yeah, it makes a difference.
That family network and that family support, and we know about that, being in the military, is without the support of our families, we're dead in the water. So having that afterwards as well, and congratulations to that marriage lasting so long as well, because being prior military, we know how hard it is to keep that family structure intact. So congratulations with everything you do, Susan. You're absolutely amazing me tonight, and I'm sitting here going, I need to pick up my game. I'm 45. I need to pick up my game. I need to start working harder.
I could be your mother, CJ. So let's go. Let's change.
Oh my goodness! You threw the gauntlet down. I'm sweating now.
Oh my gosh!
No, thank you so much for coming on the porch tonight, Susan. I love what you're doing. I've got more poems to read, and I'm excited to read them, because they are speaking to my heart, and I pray that everyone goes out and reads Expressions, like Poetic Expressions in Nursing.
Nursing, sharing the
Yes.
caring. And also that is available everywhere online. And you can just search it and it comes right up. And it's also on my website as well. There's an author page. And I'm on
Yes, make
Amazon and
sure
everything. Yeah.
if you like poetry, make sure you go and check that out. And if you're not experienced in poetry, go and read them, because they are stories about the experiences that nurses go through, how they view the world through their eyes as well. And they're heartwarming and absolutely beautiful. And I hope that Susan will share some in the Author's Porch magazine sometime. I'll shoot you some information on that. So, guys, I've had an absolute blast. Don't forget that the 1st of April, the new edition of the Author's Porch magazine, Diversity and Inclusion, comes out. You guys can grab a copy. It is on Amazon, paperback, and Kindle. I almost forgot that. So you guys can grab a copy on, it's the 4th, sorry, the 4th of April. 4th of April it comes out. And don't forget that we're here every Wednesday at 7 p.m. unless I, forget what day it is and what time it is, because that's what I do.
Exactly.
Thanks again, Susan, for being here. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Susan.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye, CJ.